Hey guys, welcome back to Cooking with Philly. I'm Ava and today we're here with Laura from Sea Grant.
Hello.
And we're making crab stuffed shrimp. Okay, so these are the ingredients you're gonna need. You can find them right over here. And you're gonna wanna make sure that you have the biggest size of Philly wild shrimp that you can find, peeled and deveined with the tail on, and you're gonna wanna butterfly your shrimp, and you'll see why in just a minute. So the first thing you wanna do is preheat your oven to 300 degrees. And we're gonna start adding in our ingredients in a large mixing bowl. We're gonna need crab meat, breadcrumbs, garlic, lemon zest, lemon juice, your scallions, parsley, mayonnaise, and mustard. And we're just gonna mix it in and with salt and pepper to taste. So what is Sea Grant?
So Sea Grant is a program based at Texas A&M University, and it's a partnership between the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, who is the federal agency that actually manages our fisheries, and the academic university. And our goal is to be the bridge between research and what's happening in our coastal and marine communities. And so we're helping to bring new innovation and ideas and technology to our coastal communities and industries. And I specifically am a fishery specialist, so I work closely with our shrimp fishery here in Texas on new ways and innovations for them to harvest shrimp and ways to reduce environmental impacts when they are out in the water fishing.
Cool. So what do you think is the most important thing that you want people to know about Sea Grant and about what y'all do?
That Sea Grant is here to help coastal communities. We are here to help the needs and solve problems, that make sure that we are using our resources wisely and sustainably, and that we have strong coastal economies.
So people always ask us why are prices a little bit higher than competitors or imported shrimp. So could you touch a little bit on that?
Sure. So in the US, we have very high standards for our wild capture fisheries, and particularly the shrimp fishery. There are a lot of regulations involved in making sure that we're harvesting our shrimp sustainably. All of those regulations come certainly at a cost to the industry to make sure that they are protecting the environment, not taking too many fish out of the water, and not causing any damage. And so those things are all costs that go into harvesting and producing shrimp for us to eat. And so when you're paying more for locally caught shrimp, you're supporting all of those conservation efforts and making sure that you are supporting a fishery that does everything the right way.
Okay, now that we have our crab mixture, we're gonna go ahead and take our jumbo-sized shrimp. We have it butterflied, and we're gonna put it belly side down, flatten it out, and we're just gonna get our spoon or our scoop and place the crab mixture on top and let it sit like that. And you're just gonna do that for all of them. So could you tell us a little bit about how wild shrimp is caught?
Sure. Wild shrimp is harvested in the waters of the Gulf of Mexico here off of our coast using what we call shrimp trawls, which are large nets that are hung off of the outriggers on the sides of the boats, and the nets are dropped to the bottom to capture shrimp on the bottom of the seafloor.
And so what are some conservation efforts that y'all use?
So of course, when you're trawling on the seafloor like that, shrimp aren't the only things that live on the seafloor, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of other animals and species that live down there, and to catch shrimp, your nets have to have pretty small holes to catch small shrimps. So there's a lot of other things that can get caught in shrimp nets at the same time when we're trying to catch shrimp. And what that is called bycatch. It's the species that you catch when you're harvesting commercial fish, or shrimp in this case, that you don't actually want. And so bycatch can be a really big issue in fisheries, especially a trawl fishery like the shrimp fishery. So the fleet here in Texas works very hard to reduce the amount of bycatch that they get in their nets, and they do that by using a bunch of different types of devices called bycatch reduction devices. And these devices are essentially holes and grids and things that are built into their trawl nets that allow certain species to escape and other species to stay in the net. So we have one thing that's required in the shrimp fishery here called a turtle excluder device, because turtles interact with the shrimp fishery quite often. And a turtle excluder device is actually a round grid that is placed in the net. It's sewn into the net so that as species come through the net in the water, the turtle is going to encounter that grid, and it's bigger than the grid size. And so what it does is it actually moves that turtle right up, and it goes out through a trap door, kind of. It's a flap in the top of the net that lets that turtle swim out of the net. While the shrimp just pass right through the grid because they're small enough. And so we're able to catch shrimp and not catch turtles.
That's awesome.
And then we also, in addition to having bycatch, in addition to having TEDs, we also have bycatch reduction devices, we call them birds, to reduce the amount of fish. And so we call them fish eyes. They're kind of a triangle looking thing on the side of the nets. And fish eyes are designed based on the hydrodynamics of the net and the behavior of fish versus shrimp. They're placed in the net in an area where fish that do make it through that grid actually can catch the water flow in the right way to find those holes in the net and swim out so that they don't get trapped in the back end of the net.
That's awesome.
It's a pretty cool innovation, and a lot of that research has stemmed from working with our federal agency partners at NOAA and working with academic researchers through Texas Sea Grant and Texas A&M University that have helped design and test nets and test these devices in the water.
So what would you say the percentage of bycatch to shrimp?
So today's bycatch to shrimp ratio is about 2 pounds to 1, which is something that we're still working a lot on. But back when the shrimp fishery was, at its height in the 90s, bycatch ratios were actually as high as 10 to 1. So we've reduced our bycatch by about 80% by using these types of devices. And a lot of the species that do still get caught in bycatch, we've done a lot of science on those species as well to prove that those species are not being negatively impacted as a population as a whole. So they're animals that either have a very short lifespan or would die normally or are often predators or prey for other species, and so they wouldn't necessarily survive. And so we've really minimized that bycatch impact of the shrimp fishery here in Texas. And those devices are required on all shrimp vessels here in Texas, and they do go through enforcement checks regularly to make sure that those devices are working.
And people are following the rules.
And that everybody's following the rules. And so at Texas Sea Grant, to make sure that all of our shrimp vessels are doing well here and have everything as efficiently as possible, before the start of our big season opening in July, we go to the docks and we make the rounds on all of the vessels that we can interact with, and we train new crew on how to use turtle excluder devices and bycatch reduction devices. And we actually check all of their nets, and we go through the measurements and make sure that all of their gear is in proper order, not only to help reduce bycatch, but also to make sure that they don't lose shrimp in the process, because that's another disadvantage of these types of conservation efforts is when you put holes in a net, you're also going to lose shrimp, And so we've worked very hard with the shrimp industry to find ways to utilize these devices without losing shrimp in the process as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so now that all of our shrimp are stuffed, we're just gonna grab some of our panko breadcrumbs and drop that on top of each of our shrimp stuffing. After you put your panko on all of our shrimp stuffing, we're just gonna grab our butter and drizzle it on top of all of our shrimp, and we're ready to go. So what are the consequences if you aren't following regulation?
There are some very severe consequences, particularly for not following regulations with turtle excluder devices. Turtles are an endangered species. All 5 species of turtles that exist in the Gulf of Mexico actually are on the endangered species list, and so violations of the Endangered Species Act are very high. So if your boat is inspected by law enforcement and your turtle excluder devices are actually not correctly in line or not being used properly, you can get fines up to the thousands of dollars, and depending on the severity of the penalty, they can take your shrimp, they can even seize your vessel and make you come back into shore. It can be a very hefty penalty. And so that's partly why Sea Grant does the dockside efforts that we do at the start of the season. So we are not law enforcement, so we make sure that we are actually going and checking in vessels at the docks before they leave for the season to make sure that everything's in line so that when they do get checked by enforcement out on the water, that they don't actually get a fine.
Okay. All right, now that we have panko all over our crab mixture, we're just gonna go ahead and drizzle some butter. And if you need a little bit more butter, go ahead and add some. Mix some more and just add it on top. Now we're gonna pop that in the oven for 15 to 18 minutes. Just make sure that the shrimp does not overcook. Okay, now that it's been about 18 minutes, we're gonna go ahead, take these out. You can see how delicious these look. We're just gonna place it here and we're gonna put our oven on broil high. And once that's heated up, then we're just gonna place these back in there for about 5 minutes, 4 or 5 minutes, and let the panko crumbs get crispy and take it out and it's ready to serve. Okay, now we're gonna take our shrimp, put it back in on broil high to get these panko crumbs crispy, and put it in there for about 4 minutes. All right, now that it's been about 5 minutes, we're just gonna get out our shrimp. Looks so crispy and yummy. So now that our shrimp are out of the oven, it's pretty much ready to eat. You can go ahead and squeeze some lemon on top. It tastes really great with lemon. And it's ready to serve. Make sure to try this fun and delicious recipe. For more recipes like this, go to phillyseafood.com and follow us on Instagram. I want to thank Laura from Sea Grant for coming today. Make sure to follow them on their social media accounts we'll have listed right here. And remember to always keep it wild. Cheers.
Cheers.